think they do it based upon tenure.
Election
I
class
think,
and then
yeah.
Well, it's segregated by
It
sex.
ended
It's
up
all that I
being,
noticed.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. I call to order the April 2026 meeting of Audit and Compliance Committee of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to those of us joining us in the Campus View room. While today's meeting is not being live streamed, the recording will be uploaded and archived to the board's YouTube channel after today's meeting. Before we get started on the agenda, let me welcome our student representatives for today. Danielle Herrera from the Rochester campus and Vera Borowski from the Twin Cities campus, Vera Borowski from the Twin Cities campus, who are both joining us virtually. Thank you both for being here. The first item this afternoon is an analysis of the university's compliance landscape. Here to provide the analysis is Executive Vice President for Finance and Operations, Greg Goldman. Executive Vice President Goldman, whenever you are ready, please proceed.
Great. Thank you, Chair Verhalen and the committee. Today, we're discussing a proposed framework to modernize the university's institutional compliance. I want to be clear at the outset. This initiative is not a response to any specific incident, issue, or finding of fraud. Instead, this is a proactive effort to align the university with evolving institutional best practices. Our goal is to move towards a more proactive, integrated system, one that identifies compliance risks before they become incidences. The university already has deep local expertise embedded across our campuses. This framework is not about replacing that expertise. It's about strengthening the leadership, governance, and coordination that ties it all together. We're evolving our structure to ensure that compliance is a coordinated institutional priority rather than a set of rules managed in isolated offices. This proposal is a result of a comprehensive compliance landscape analysis conducted in October of 2025. It represents a significant step forward, modernizing how we protect the university's mission in an increasingly complex regulatory world. I want to thank John Gooden, Interim Chief Compliance Officer, and his team, as well as many of our colleagues across the university who provided input into this framework. This chart illustrates our current compliance structure. What it shows is a decentralized ecosystem. While it has strengths, that also has opportunities. While we have deep expertise embedded within our individual units, this model has naturally led to fragmentation. As you can see, information tends to flow vertically within silos rather than horizontally across the institution. In our current state, we have had some governance erosion. For example, the Executive Oversight Committee was suspended and the President's Policy Committee was absorbed into the President's Cabinet. When these specific compliance bodies aren't as robust, it's harder for us to spot system-wide trends before they escalate. You can also see that the Health Information Privacy and Compliance Officer, or HIPCO, reports up to the Office of Academic and Clinical Affairs, or OACA, with not much connection to the Office of Institutional Compliance. In short, our current setup limits our visibility into the big picture risks facing the university as a whole. This slide represents our roadmap for modernization, future state compliance structure. The most critical change is a shift from isolated functions to a hub and spoke model that centers on integration and clear accountability. First, we're elevating the Chief Compliance Officer role. This is no longer just an operational position. The CCO will work more directly with leaders, including chancellors, to build a unified system-wide compliance strategy. Next, reporting to the CCO, we're creating a Chief Privacy Officer position. For the first time, this will bring HIPAA and other privacy obligations, such as European GDPR law, under one roof within the Office of Institutional Compliance. The Chief Privacy Officer will work closely with and have an established line of information sharing with other privacy functions, including the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, function in the Provost's office. The Chief Privacy Officer would also partner on data governance with IT, research, healthcare, and administration. The establishment of the Chief Privacy Officer will support the move of HIPCO from OACA to the Office of Institutional Compliance. This ensures that privacy is treated as an institutional priority, not just a clinical one. We're also revamping the Compliance Partner Network, modeled after the successful RRC's accountability system within the rest of the university, to ensure that the compliance information flows to the Chief Compliance Officer from across the university. By recharting the Executive Oversight and Policy Committee, we'll leverage the collective knowledge and expertise of senior leaders and policy owners to guide compliance and policy decisions. This ensures that our response to emerging risks are coordinated and effectively prioritized across the institution. I will talk with the groups about the maroon circles in a moment. The slide shows what is not changing. Our framework does not impact the Audit and Compliance Committee's continued board level oversight over the institutional compliance program or enterprise risk as codified in board policy. However, by strengthening compliance and privacy oversight and coordination under the CCO, we expect we'll be able to provide you more robust compliance updates with data that is more complete and more integrated. Moving into the details of the framework, I want to highlight the groups that will drive our day-to-day coordination. First is the Institutional Strategic Risk and Compliance Group. If the board and the cabinet provide the direction, this group, convened by the Chief Compliance Officer, is an operational engine. It brings together our top experts from enterprise risk management, information security, general counsel, internal audit, and research compliance. This is a formal coordination hub responsible for identifying emerging risks and translating them into actionable information for leadership. They can also look into compliance concerns, whether raised through a report or directed by the Executive Oversight Committee, and develop coordinated institutional response plans. Members of this group maintain their expertise, existing reporting lines to their own leadership, but the formalization of this group ensures that we are collaborating across units and that no matter where an issue starts, it is assessed collaboratively and escalated appropriately. If the previous slide was the engine, this slide shows the expertise, the compliance partners that are the professionals across our campuses who live and breathe these regulations every day, including those establishing university policies and providing ongoing oversight of compliance areas. They may not be experts in compliance of export controls or taxes, for example, and this list is not exhaustive. The updated Compliance Partner Network will be modeled after the RRC accountability framework. These partners will have informational dotted lines connected to the Chief Compliance Officer, who will establish mechanisms for them to periodically share information updates within their compliance areas. This will ensure the Chief Compliance Officer remains informed of compliance risks and trends and provides a direct path for compliance partners to report any potential issues to senior management via the Chief Compliance Officer. While these networks we've discussed so far are organized by department, our affinity groups are organized by risk area. The reality of a large university is that risks like institutional compliance don't stay neatly within one office. They touch virtually every part of our institution and mission. The cross-functional affinity group structure brings together experts from units who are working on the same challenges. These groups are designed to spot emerging issues like new federal regulations on foreign influence before they become a crisis. The structure also provides a more formal escalation pathway. The affinity groups will have a designated lead and a formal process to connect with the Chief Compliance Officer. Additionally, if an affinity group sees a trend, they will have a clear documented path to elevate that risk to our strategic risk group for action. By formalizing these groups, we have this clear structure for ownership and coordination. As I mentioned, we're reestablishing the formal governance bodies that ensure our senior leaders have direct eyes on compliance and policy. We will be rechartering the Executive Oversight Committee. By bringing it back, we have provided dedicated system-wide space for administrative oversight where the big picture risk identified by our staff will be reviewed by leadership. Secondly, we are reestablishing the President's Policy Committee. Previously, policy reviews are being handled as part of general cabinet meetings. By making this a distinct committee again, we'll ensure that administrative policies receive a focused expert review before they are finalized. These two communities will ensure that compliance is integrated into the university's highest levels of decision-making. Our immediate priority is restoring the governance structure I mentioned. Simultaneously, we're going to be launching the search for a new Chief Compliance Officer. This person will be the strategic anchor for the entire framework and will lead the future evolution of the landscape analysis once they are on board. As the new leadership takes shape, we'll move to formalize the groups we've discussed today, the Strategic Risk Group, the Compliance Partners, and our affinity groups. We'll also hire a dedicated privacy officer to lead our realigned HIPAA and data privacy efforts. We expect to return to this committee in December to provide progress update on these milestones and introduce new leadership as part of the regular annual institutional compliance report. Our goal is to have the core pillars of this framework operational by the end of this calendar year, ensuring the university is better protected, better coordinated, and more proactive than it ever has been before. I now want to turn the floor over to the committee. As we build the framework and recruit a new Chief Information Officer, we have a unique opportunity to tailor this work to meet your governance needs. I'm interested in your thoughts on key areas such as reporting cadence, measuring success, priorities, and reporting our work. I'm happy to take your questions and your thoughts at this time. Thank you, Chair Harlan.
Thank you very much, EVP Goldman. Before we turn to discussion, Chief Auditor Galsworth, is there any additional context or perspective you'd like to provide?
Sure. One item I would like to highlight here before we get into the discussions, in the compliance landscape analysis recommendations in your materials, recommendation 4 in those materials relates to me specifically, the Chief Auditor, and my reporting lines. As many of you know who've been on the committee for a while, I have a unique reporting line here that's very unique compared to my peers in the Big Ten and elsewhere, where both my functional and administrative reporting line goes to the board, functional to you all, administrative to the chair of the board. As best practices by Institute of Internal Audit Standards, the administrative reporting line should be to the president. However, other organizations within the Big Ten or other internal audit departments in the Big Ten will have that reporting line to the CFO or potentially OGC or others. In this landscape analysis, there's a recommendation to add that administrative reporting line back. By the way, it did exist prior to me going into this role. The administrative reporting line went to the president. Again, I'm supportive of there being an administrative reporting line, but that ultimately would have to be a board decision. That's something that we can discuss in the future, either at the June board meeting when I kind of provide my regular update to the board on all of our work, or potentially in October if we're talking about changes to the audit charter.
Great. Just really quickly before we go to discussion, just to kind of summarize everything that I'm seeing here, it's really keeping the subject matter expertise that we currently have within the decentralized model, but adding that stronger central leadership, reviving some of the governance committees, creating a more robust chief compliance officer role, privacy function, making sure that all of it is working in concert versus in each of their individual lines, so to speak. Regent Hines.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask Quinn, is there some underlying substantive issue on your reporting president, chair, whatever, or just doesn't it matter? I mean, it sounds to me like it's one or half a dozen the other, but I don't know anything about this.
Thank you, Chair Verhalen, Regent Hines. There's good reasons for why you'd want to have an administrative reporting line go into the administration. Some of that is just practical from, managing things like vacations and expenses and doing some of those things, that the administration has those things built in place and can kind of work through those items. The other reason is to ensure that there's a good connection between the chief auditor and senior leader administration. I mean, to be blunt, what we're doing right now is we are maintaining those relationships. I meet with the president every other month. I meet with Greg monthly. I individually, and I sit on some of his team's committees to maintain those connections. But that's really just because we're agreeing to do that. It's kind of a gentleman's handshake type situation, and not where you would expect that to be with more of a reporting line. So to answer your question, I don't think that it is creating a situation that is impeding my ability to do my job right now. But the correct setup would be to have an administrative reporting line going to the administration, from my perspective.
Yeah, it's really codifying what is truly a best practice. We're, as individual board members, not in a role to provide administrative direction to the chief auditor, but being able to document what is expected of that relationship. Like you said, you're doing it all on a handshake, mutual agreement right now. And knowing that we set up a structure where that is very clearly the expectation, I think would be beneficial.
Yeah, I agreed, Chair Verhalen. And, and I should clarify, Regent Hines, because I know you weren't on the committee when this was discussed coming out of the quality assurance review last December 2024. The functional reporting line would still go to the Audit and Compliance Committee. So the final decisions on hiring and firing, the oversight of the audit plan, there would still be that independence. Yep. It's for these other functions.
Yeah. Regent Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, EVP Goldman. With reigniting these groups, right, in these spaces, just knowing how much there's so many risks just showing up in our landscape. I think one thing that did come to mind for me, as you provided us just a high level snapshot of some of the affinity groups and those buckets, right, was around, the group of international, research, clinical care, student services, and athletics. I think one element that comes to mind for me is that, the services that we offer are not offered in silos, right? And the services that we deliver, and oftentimes it is delivering to the greater public. And so how are we considering the general public as one of those affinity groups, as really oftentimes things that happen within those communities and our surrounding areas do impact, right, our infrastructure and sometimes create a capacity load for us that sometimes we're not aware is going to come down the pike, right? So are we thinking about the general public and some of our surrounding communities as some of these affinity groups that we're thinking through from like a risk mitigation and prevention and compliance standpoint?
Yeah, I think a really good question, Regent Mohammed and Chair Verhalen. I think each of these affinity groups, so first, this is not one and done on these groups. I think this will evolve for just the reasons you've said, but as I look at this, many of these reach out to the public. Student services is public, athletics, and I would hope that each of these affinity groups would bring back to their committees public interaction. And we can think through, and I'd love to have a conversation offline to think, so I could think, something like UMPD, which is constantly interacting with the public, how we bring their knowledge, their expertise, and their line of sight into this. And that's something, I can take away as we finalize this. Obviously, they'd be an affinity group of one, but how we start to weave in some of that line of sight out into the community to minimize those risks as well. So let me work with the team on that, and certainly we'll look forward to those discussions.
Follow up, are you good? Okay. Regent Hips.
Thank you, Chair Verhalen. Thank you, Executive Vice President Goldman. So when I look at what I want to see for compliance and risk, I look at, right now, research is huge because it's such a big enterprise for us. And with, it seems like if you make one little mistake there, they're going to cut all $1.3 billion of federal funding, So we have to really, really be on top of that, I think, in the near term. And then also with athletics, because it's so public, you do one little thing wrong there and it's all over the paper. You could, do 1,000 things right, but that one little, and so those are the two areas One is huge revenue for us and one is just really public. So anyway, to answer that question, number 3 or 2, 3 in there. So.
And Chair Verhalen and Regent Hipsch, I would agree 100%. And
Yeah.
certainly research, and, you know, I'll be honest, if we looked at this compliance group structure and we kind of talked with cabinet about this, certainly interim VP Billings had a very strong view of how research should be in this. And I'll play a little bit of a forward that she has agreed to be one of the co-chairs for the search of our new chief compliance officer, just because research compliance is so darn important, just for what you said. And athletics is always there. And certainly, you know, AD Coyle is a phenomenal partner in all that we do, and his team will continue to be involved in this as well.
Yeah, thank you.
As far as the question on how would the committee like to receive information on the emerging risks, compliance concerns, institutional risk trends, I feel like this administrative group reporting to us has been really good the last couple of years. There's also been a good cadence of those meetings where we do need to close to discuss security information, just to make sure we're tracking with some of those key compliance areas. And I just want to express that I appreciate the way that that information's been brought forward, both to audit and compliance, but also to the full board, as we've needed those updates.
Appreciate that. And certainly what I'm hopeful, Chair Verhalen, is that the restating of these two committees, the president's policy, you know, it was, I think, in the interest of efficiencies. Well, we meet all the time, let's just try to be efficient. But what happens is, at the end of a meeting, efficiency leads to trying to be maybe more expeditious and not having that thoughtful review. And then the larger group, past institutions I've been at, that's a real driving force, meeting once a quarter with broad population, including the president, our chancellors, and others, to really have those high-level risk discussions, which I think then also inform coming back here. And hopefully, if we can do this right, it's less of those, oh my gosh, discussions and more of here's what we're doing to prevent it. But, you know, the reality is no amount of work is going to keep us risk-free. And our job is just to be able to also identify the risks as quickly as they come up to mitigate them.
Yeah, please, Chief Auditor.
Yeah, thank you, Regent Verhalen. I think, you know, when you're talking about the cadence and the information that's being provided, you know, this is something that could be a little iterative as well as we get a new chief compliance officer in place, get a chief privacy officer in place, and it may become a little bit more natural for what should be provided to the committee. However, I would expect at minimum that, you know, with these additional lines of communication and expectations of, you know, sharing of information with the chief compliance officer, that's going to allow future chief compliance officers to provide a more fulsome report to the committee in December that can pull in the information from all the various areas, where I would say as of now, the majority of that reporting out is really about work that's happening in their office, you know, related to youth reports or whatever it might be. So hopefully what you see is just that, you know, there's more depth and breadth included within those reports, and then we can think about other items that would be useful going forward.
Great. Anything else from anyone? Great.
Perfect. Then just,
Thank you for your time.
in closing, just want to reiterate the charts and reporting lines we've discussed today are technical. Their purpose is simple: to protect the mission of the university. By elevating our leadership, restoring our governance committees, and formalizing the networks of experts we've already have on campuses, we'll move from reactive position to a proactive one. So I thank the committee for the time, the partnership, and the help in strengthening our compliance functions.
Thank you very much, EVP Goldman. Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, our second item is an update on the Enterprise Risk Management Program, including the institutional risk profile. So walking us through the update today is Associate Vice President for Health, Safety, and Risk Management, Catherine Bonison. Welcome, AVP Bonison. Whenever you are ready, please proceed. I know we have to get the technology synced, so no worries.
Thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be here today to give you an update on enterprise risk management. And some of this information was just presented by EVP Goldman, so I will try to roll through some of the parts that are repeatable. So just our quick agenda, we're going to do just a reminder of what ERM is, big picture at the university, talk about some of the governance updates that EVP Goldman just discussed and how it affects ERM. So it's sort of a continuation of that discussion. Take a quick look at some of the deliverables to include a risk profile and some next steps, and then sort of the way forward. And I know I'm the last presentation before everyone goes home, so I will be as efficient as possible. So we always start with sort of this big picture of, risk broadly in higher education, and that's what really the slide, it's certainly not going to cover more than like the 3% view, but the big conversations we hear in our peer groups and with the Big Ten is political and economical uncertainty atop the list, and then AI. There's sort of this overload of AI. And so we talk a lot about that. AI, though, also as emerging risk, but also an opportunity. And then the recurring themes that have been in the picture for the last 4 to 5 years, data security and cybersecurity as top risks in higher ed, and then enrollment. And what's always fascinating to me is when I look at the board agenda, a lot of these topics are pieces that, we talk about. So I feel like, again, the U of M is very much in tune. We will also see across higher education that people in my position that are trying to have these discussions about risk and risk management are trying to find new ways to create that conversation and to keep people engaged in that conversation. And so there's lots of experimentation on dashboards, which we'll talk briefly about today, and other products that will help people sort of see what the university's risk profile looks like at a strategic level. And then lastly, one of the real key pieces to talk about today is that it's really important to have clear governance and support from our senior leaders in order to move risk management forward. So we can talk briefly about the university's program. So as a reminder, we're fairly new, ERM, established in 2022. It is homed in health, safety, and risk management, and we have one full-time manager who does a lot of the work for us. There's Nate sitting in the audience. So some of our initial program deliverables are listed there, and I won't necessarily walk through them, but today is a discussion about sort of restarting and kicking off these deliverables and letting you know sort of what our plan is going forward. We did come in October to talk with this committee about sort of this pause while the work that EVP Goldman talked about in terms of thinking about governance and sort of how all these teams work together. So this is, again, that continuation to hopefully unpause the work and start moving forward. This slide really builds on the earlier presentation, and so the emergence of the Executive Oversight Committee and sort of how ERM will work with it. And so we will roll up through EOC along with institutional compliance, which gives us great line of sight across the institution and the system so that we're not having separate conversations in silos. So we're excited about this next step. And then EVP Goldman also talked about the creation of the Institutional Strategic Risk and Compliance Group. And the importance to us in ERM is we've never had this sort of flexible working group where we can bounce ideas off of, we can talk about emerging risks, we can talk about trends and what we're hearing, or we might have heard from our friends at Michigan or Ohio, and how do they see that happening in their roles. So that it really helps us sort of just have these really good, I think, impactful conversations. So then we know what to escalate and to where and when, and what are things we just continue to watch. So one of the key pieces is this risk profile that, again, we're excited to have some feedback from this Institutional Strategic Risk and Compliance Group. So let's talk for a minute about the profile. So this was the last one I think this committee was able to review in 2024. And then we paused on developing this risk profile. The reason this document is so important is it really is sort of the map or the foundation for an ERM program. It helps sort of set the pace. Like you have to have a map to then know where you're going. So we're ready to restart this process of updating this profile annually. And so what we're hoping that will look like is we'll continue to use, what we do right now is we send out a survey. And we survey, right now it's leaders, people who are in general in decision-making positions, about 85 people across the system. And we ask them to rank their risks. And we give them a number of options, and then they can write in risks. We take all that information and create the risk profile. One of the key pieces of feedback we received from the president's cabinet was, why are we just asking leaders? Shouldn't we be also asking our frontline employees, our student employees, our faculty? So we are working right now to change that process and open up that survey a little more broadly to try to get a broader response rate from people in different views across the university. So that's a change that we're going to implement this spring. The second change will be is once we gather those survey results, historically, we put that profile together and then brought it up to the executive committee. There was no in between. And so the additional of the institutional strategic risk and compliance group will allow us a chance to talk about it, to make sure it makes sense, to try to, right size anything or adjust anything before we go straight to the executive level. So I think that's a great addition. So with that process in place, the plan would be to update this every spring and bring it back to this committee in the fall on an annual basis. So once we have a profile, then you're probably wondering, great, you have a list of risks, so what do you do with it? What we try to do with it is we go through and we prioritize risks that we want to dig a little deeper into. And it's to understand the risk of not just why is it a risk, because often we understand cybersecurity is a risk. It's more of what's specific about the University of Minnesota, what trends are we seeing here? Do we have the right people in the room having these discussions? Do we have certain areas which are higher risk than others? It's trying to make those connections. And that's what we'd like to do in these deep dives. So as we get this sort of the next steps into which ones are we going to deep dive into, these are sort of the principles that will lead that work. The one thing to remember is that when you do these sort of deep dive risk analysis, it's not a one and done. It's not a report that you take and then you put it away. It should be a dialogue that's ongoing, right? And somehow we're tracking progress of, are those mitigation efforts, are they effective? Are we seeing things improve, or we have other concerns? So how do you track that? Well, one thing we're looking at is we're trying to implement a scorecard, which is maybe something, and again, where it goes and how public it is, I think are things that we'll continue to work with the governance group on. But to give us an idea, as we identify these risks, we study these risks, we talk about them, we want to know which way are they going? Are we becoming more resilient, or are we potentially losing ground, or are we stagnant, and why? And so this is one of the products our team is hoping to implement in this next cycle. So kind of wrap all that information up into sort of a work plan. So we're here today having this discussion with you, which I appreciate the time. And then we're going to hopefully launch our survey in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll get that updated risk profile. We'll work through our governance structures this summer, and we'll come back to you in the fall with the updated risk profile. And I thought, it's kind of feeling nostalgic that it's 3 years that we've been working on this program. Sort of what have we learned? What have we learned? We've learned that ERM, it can be highly effective, and it does seem to be sort of the way forward. More and more, I think almost all of our peer institutions now have a formal enterprise risk management program. It is becoming sort of the standard. It's certainly a standard in industry. We've also learned that the governance structure is vitally important. And so the presentation that preceded me was a really beneficial, I think, step for our program in the right direction to have this clear line of sight. So we're really excited to move forward. We've also learned that our risk assessment process, it has to be nimble and efficient, because we have found that you're identifying a risk, you're working on it, and all of a sudden everything changes. And then there's a new policy, there's a new this, there's a new that. And so trying to keep up and make this information relevant means you have to be very, very flexible. We also realized that we need a standard package of content that people can relate to, that feels comfortable, that bringing back to this committee, that you understand where we are versus giving you new stuff. We also felt like our program is very well positioned, reporting to the EVP for Finance and Ops, and this has been a really good partnership, especially this governance restart. So with that, we threw some questions out there, and I think some of them were answered in the earlier presentation, but I'm happy to receive any feedback or questions the committee might have.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Regent Hines and then Regent.
No, Regent Hibbs, go ahead.
I just Chair Vail and Vice President Bonison, I just want to commend you on this. This is really important stuff. This is going to pay dividends if we do it right in a big way. I mean, if we can get our risks down to near zero, we're never going to eliminate everything, but that's everything. Every time we get in trouble, it's big dollars. So, so thank you for doing this, and keep it going. So
Thank you.
Regent Hines.
I'm new to this and very ignorant. So when you talk about expanding the survey pool to include frontline employees and academics, I take it, and researchers, whatever, and you send them a survey, what's in the survey? If I'm sitting in it as a frontline employee, what are you asking me?
Sure, Chair Hines, Regent Hines, Chair Verhalen, good question. So the survey, as currently modeled, will give you, we try to make it really easy. It's like drop and drag, a list of risks, and then you just rank them as what are the things that keep you up at night from your perspective in your role. And then at the end, we say, write in risks that you didn't see. So tell us what else. So we try to keep it fairly simple, try to keep it something that someone could do in 5-10 minutes. And I'm sure that's one of many variations of the way our peers do it. Some people sit down and they have discussions, they have work groups, we've gone with a survey just to try to make it repeatable.
Any follow-up? Are you good?
No, I think that's a great answer. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Regent Mohammed?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the snapshot. Just a quick question around, are there particular things that we can be doing better as an enterprise when it comes to data security and cybersecurity, right? Like there's a situation that Winona County just dealt with. Prior to that was the city of St. Paul. So these are really local examples of like other enterprises that have been kind of attacked. And so are there things that we could, not getting super into the details, that we could be doing better, things that we should be looking out for as a board that you'll be bringing forward to us to just consider?
Yep, Regent Mohammed, Chair Verhalen, I'd like to phone a friend who's in the audience.
Oh, I love that.
Brian Belen could probably speak to that when we get to those specifics. And this is one of the key reasons we think some of this new governance and having Brian be part of this new team with us will help.
Yeah, broadly, thanks for the question. The quick answer is yes. There's always lots of things that can be done in information security. What I am comfortable with is that the program is in place to help identify those things and continue to evaluate them. We have risk management programs within security that help feed in some of this information into enterprise risk management to make sure that the university is managing this globally and looking at the challenges that we have. No information security is going to be perfect, and there are always going to be risks in this space because we need the ability to operate and balance those things as well, and the threats are real out in the environment. But those mechanisms that are in place are there to evaluate and continue to identify those things that we need to implement and the technologies that we need to keep up to date so that we can address risks that are continuing in the environment.
Oh, yeah, Chief Auditor Gulson,
Yeah,
please.
thank you, Chair Verhalen. Just to add on to this a little bit and going back to Regent Verhalen's earlier comment about information security updates to the committee, I think it's just such a complex area and there's just so much risk and the risk is evolving there that really, since I've been in this role, really try to set a regular cadence of having at least a meeting every year where we can close the meeting and have a conversation about this information security. And so I expect that that's probably going to be something we continue to do for many years to come, just given that complexity and how quick things are moving in this space.
And I guess with everything just rapidly evolving, right, is there an opportunity to increase the level of just line of sight that we have in that space just around updates, right? Instead of annual, maybe it's 2 times a year, just knowing that there's just a whole lot of risk there. Yeah, maybe something to explore. Yeah.
Chair Verhalen, Regent Mohammed, yeah, absolutely. I think what we've done in the past is we've closed meetings or we brought up topics if there's something particular that has happened or that we want to discuss. But you know, again, open to discussing that, especially as we get into agenda planning next fall and kind of thinking through if there's additional updates that we want in this space. Also, going back to the previous presentation, there might be some updates related to privacy, for example, that would be, you know, indirectly related to the information security. When we talk about like HIPAA privacy, piece of that is the security rules that are associated with ensuring HIPAA privacy. So there might be other opportunities to hit it in different ways.
Anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you
Thank you so much. I
very
appreciate it.
Brings us to our information items today. Chief Auditor Galswick, anything to highlight?
Yes, thank you, Chair Verhalen, members of the committee. On page 41 of your document materials, there are two information items today. The first is engagements with the university's appointed independent external auditor requiring after-the-fact reporting. This is the standard reports that you receive whenever the administration does work with an external auditing firm. In this case, it is Clifton Larson Allen, our external audit firm, that provided assurance work, so it did not create any sort of conflicts of interest. The other information item is a board-required report, the review of external auditor relationships and services. In that report, it talks through the fees in which were paid to external auditors this year, highlights some of the particular strengths of Clifton Larson Allen and potential ongoing areas for improvement. And with that ends my remarks, and I stand for any questions you may have, or Controller Viola here as well.
Questions or comments on the information items? All right. There being no additional business before the committee, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.